I died on a Tuesday. Well, not exactly. But I stood at the edge of death so close I could smell it. Sulfur. Smoke. The acrid stench of my father's rage burning hotter than the flames licking at my feet. He held the match between his tobacco-stained fingers, his hand steady as a surgeon's, and I remember thinking, this is how my story ends. Burned alive for loving the wrong God. But here's the thing nobody tells you about near-death experiences: sometimes you don't die. Sometimes something else happens. Something that defies every law of physics, every religious doctrine, every shred of logic your brain desperately clings to. That Tuesday, I should have burned. The gasoline was real. The match was real. My father's hatred was devastatingly, suffocatingly real. But I'm standing here today, talking to you, because Jesus Christ stepped into that courtyard and said no. If you're watching this and you think I'm crazy, good. I thought I was crazy too. If you're a Muslim who stumbled onto this video, stay with me. I was you. I know the fear crawling up your spine right now. And if you're a Christian who's never truly understood the cost of following Jesus, you're about to. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began. Not to the fire, we'll get there, but to the golden cage I called home. I grew up in a palace that felt like a mausoleum. White marble floors stretching endlessly, so polished I could see my reflection, a girl in an expensive abaya, wrapped in silence, drowning in wealth. Our estate sat behind 12-foot walls topped with iron spikes, keeping the poor out and, I realize now, keeping me in. My father was a man of three things: money, reputation, and Allah. In that order. He owned textile factories across the Gulf, his hands stained not with dye but with the desperate labor of workers who couldn't afford to quit. Every rug in our home cost more than those workers made in a year. I used to walk across them barefoot, feeling the Persian silk beneath my toes, never knowing I was walking on someone else's dreams. My mother was a ghost. She existed, I could see her moving through the corridors in her black abaya, a shadow among shadows, but she never spoke. Not really. Her words were like autumn leaves, dried up, fragile, falling without sound. When she looked at me, I saw something terrifying in her eyes. Not love. Not even pity. Acceptance. She had accepted her cage. And she expected me to accept mine. I had two older brothers who were golden sons, extensions of my father's ego, built in his image. They talked about Jannah like it was a business acquisition. 5 prayers a day, check. Zakat paid, check. Reputation pristine, check. Heaven secured. God reduced to a transaction. Worship as a contract negotiation. And then there was me. Amira. Princess. That's what my name means. The irony still makes me want to scream. I was 17 when the first crack appeared in my perfectly constructed prison. It happened during Fajr prayer, that pre-dawn moment when the city still sleeps and the muezzin's call pierces the darkness like a blade. I was on my prayer mat, forehead pressed to the cold floor, reciting the same Arabic words I'd memorized as a child, words I'd spoken 10,000 times but never truly felt. And suddenly, in the middle of my prostration, a question rose up from somewhere deep inside my chest: why am I doing this? Not the rebellious question of a teenager who wants to sleep in. Something far more dangerous. If Allah loves me, why do I feel so utterly alone? I froze, forehead still against the mat, my heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted to escape my body. Asking such a question felt like blasphemy. Like spiritual treason. I could almost hear the hellfire crackling, waiting for me. But I couldn't unthink it. That morning, after prayer, I went to the window of my third-floor bedroom and looked out over the city. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of amber and blood. Somewhere below, in the labyrinth of streets, people were waking up. Living. Choosing. Free. I pressed my palm against the glass, feeling the coolness against my skin, and whispered a prayer I'd never dared to pray before. If you're real, let me feel something. Anything. Please. Silence answered me. The same silence that had answered me every single day of my life. I didn't know it then, but that whispered prayer was about to detonate my entire existence. Because when you ask for truth, really ask, you better be ready for your world to burn down. And mine was about to become an inferno. My father's study smelled like death wearing expensive cologne. Leather-bound Qurans lined the walls, not for reading, but for display. Oud incense burned in a brass holder on his mahogany desk, its sweet smoke curling upward like the prayers of people who actually believed. And there, behind that desk, sat a man who could quote every surah about mercy but had never shown me an ounce of it. Baba didn't look like a monster. That's what made him so terrifying. He wore tailored thobes, pristine white, pressed to perfection. His beard was trimmed according to Sunnah, exactly 1 fist length, groomed with oil that cost more than most people's monthly salary. When he walked into a mosque, men stood straighter. When he spoke at business meetings, rooms fell silent. He was respected. Feared. Untouchable. But I knew what lived behind those coal-black eyes. I'd seen it since childhood, that cold calculation, that absolute certainty that he owned everything he touched. Including me. I was summoned to his study 3 weeks after that first dangerous prayer. The house servant, an Indonesian woman named Sari who'd been with us for years, came to my room with trembling hands. "Your father wants to see you," she whispered, and I saw fear in her eyes. The kind of fear that comes from witnessing things she could never speak about. I walked down the marble staircase, each step echoing like a countdown. My hands were slick with sweat beneath my abaya. That morning sickness feeling, the one you get when you know something terrible is coming but can't see its shape yet, twisted in my stomach. He didn't look up when I entered. Just gestured to the chair across from his desk with 2 fingers, the way you'd signal a dog to sit. I sat. The silence stretched between us like a rope pulled taut, ready to snap. He was reading something, contracts, probably, or bank statements, the casual cruelty of making me wait, letting the dread build. It was one of his favorite tactics. Finally, he set down his gold pen. Looked at me. And smiled. That smile was worse than any scream. "Amira," he said, my name sounding like a business transaction in his mouth. "You're 17 now. A woman. It's time we discussed your future." My heart dropped into my stomach. "There's a family, very respected, very wealthy, the Al-Rashids from Riyadh. Old money. Pure lineage. Their eldest son, Hassan, is 28. Successful. Devout." He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled like a man who'd just closed a profitable deal. "He's asked for your hand in marriage. I've accepted." The world tilted sideways. "What?" The word barely made it past my lips. "The engagement will be announced next month. The wedding will take place after your 18th birthday. 6 months." He said it the way someone might say, "We're having lamb for dinner." Flat. Final. Non-negotiable. I couldn't breathe. The room was spinning, the oud smoke too thick, choking me. "But I don't know him. I've never even met him." "You'll meet him at the engagement party." My father picked up his pen again, already done with the conversation. "This is a tremendous honor, Amira. The Al-Rashids could have chosen anyone. You should be grateful." Grateful. That word detonated something inside me. 17 years of silence, of obedience, of swallowing my questions and fears and dreams, it all rose up in my throat like bile. I don't want to marry him. The pen stopped moving. Slowly, so slowly it made my skin crawl, my father raised his eyes to meet mine. And what I saw there made me understand why Sari's hands had been shaking. Nothing. I saw nothing. No anger, no surprise, no emotion at all. Just a vast, empty darkness, like staring into a well that had no bottom. What you want, he said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, is irrelevant. I'm your daughter. You are my responsibility. He set the pen down with a soft click that sounded like a cell door closing. Given to me by Allah to protect, to guide, to ensure your place in Jannah. And I will fulfill that duty, whether you understand it or not. This isn't about Jannah. My voice cracked, tears burning behind my eyes. This is about control. About your reputation, your business connections. The sound of his palm slamming against the desk made me jump, my words dying in my throat. He stood. Slowly. Every movement deliberate, calculated to maximize fear. He walked around the desk. I wanted to run, every instinct screaming at me to flee, but my legs were frozen, and stopped directly in front of me. When he spoke, his breath smelled like cardamom and something rotten underneath. You will marry Hassan al-Rashid. You will smile at the engagement party. You will be the obedient, pious daughter I have raised you to be. His hand shot out and gripped my chin, forcing me to look up at him. His fingers dug into my jaw until I tasted blood where I bit my cheek. Because the alternative is that you bring shame upon this family. And I will not tolerate shame. Do you understand me? Tears spilled down my cheeks, hot and humiliating. Do you understand me? Yes, Baba, I whispered, the words ash in my mouth. He released me with a small shove, sending me stumbling backward. Good. Now get out of my sight. And fix your face before your mother sees you. We don't need her asking questions. I fled. Ran up those marble stairs, my abaya tangling around my legs, burst into my bedroom and locked the door. I collapsed against it, sliding down until I was sitting on the floor, hugging my knees to my chest, trying to breathe through the panic clawing at my throat. 6 months. I had 6 months until I would be handed over to a stranger. A man I'd never met. Who would own me the way my father owned me? Who would share my bed, control my body, dictate my life, and I would have no say, no choice, no escape. This was my future. This was the rest of my life. I looked around my gilded bedroom, the silk curtains, the ornate furniture, the jewelry box filled with gold I never wore, and finally understood what my mother's eyes had been trying to tell me all these years. This wasn't a home. It was a breeding ground for beautiful, obedient prisoners. And I was next in line. That night, I prayed to Allah with more desperation than I'd ever felt in my life. I begged him to change my father's heart. I promised to be more devout, more grateful, more anything if he would just give me a way out. I prayed until my voice went hoarse. Until my tears ran dry. Until the call to far prayer echoed across the city, announcing another dawn I didn't want to see. And Allah? Allah said nothing. The silence was so complete, so absolute, it felt like I was praying to an empty sky. But I didn't know, couldn't have known, that someone else was listening. Someone who'd heard every broken word, every desperate plea, every suffocated dream. Someone who was about to shatter my entire understanding of God. Drowning doesn't always happen in water. Sometimes you drown in silk sheets and unanswered prayers. Sometimes you drown in a house full of people while dying of loneliness. Sometimes you drown on dry land, gasping for air that never comes, surrounded by a religion that promises peace but delivers only emptiness. I drowned for 3 months straight. After my father's announcement, I became the perfect daughter. On the outside, I smiled when Hassan al-Rashid's family came for the formal meeting, watched this stranger examine me like livestock, his eyes cold and appraising, calculating my worth. I sat silent while our mothers discussed wedding arrangements, my future being packaged and wrapped like a gift I had no say in giving. I attended every prayer. Every single one. Far before dawn when exhaustion made my bones ache. During the afternoon heat. Asr, Maghrib, Isha. 5 times a day, I bent and prostrated, forehead to the mat, speaking Arabic words that felt like sand in my mouth. And I begged. If you've never experienced the agony of praying to a God who won't answer, let me paint it for you. It's not like asking a friend for help and getting a no. It's not even like screaming into the void and hearing echoes. It's worse. It's like pouring your entire soul out to someone you've been taught is always listening, always merciful, always there, and being met with a silence so profound it makes you question your own existence. You start wondering, is he ignoring me? Am I praying wrong? Am I too sinful to deserve an answer? Or, and this is the thought that terrified me most, is there nobody listening at all? I followed every rule more strictly than ever before. I read the Quran in Arabic even though I barely understood it, my finger tracing the elegant script, hoping meaning would seep into me through osmosis. I wore my hijab tighter, covered every inch of skin, lowered my gaze until I was barely looking at the world anymore. I fasted on Mondays and Thursdays, voluntary fasts beyond Ramadan, thinking maybe my devotion would tip some cosmic scale and Allah would finally intervene. My mother noticed. One afternoon, she found me in my room, prayer beads wrapped around my fingers until they left marks, lips moving in constant dhikr. Amira, she said softly, sitting on the edge of my bed. For a moment, just one fragile moment, I thought she might understand. Might help. You seem troubled. I looked up at her, this woman who'd birthed me but never fought for me, and I wanted to scream, of course I'm troubled. I'm being sold to a stranger. Don't you care? But the words that came out were different. Smaller. More desperate. When you married Baba, did you? I couldn't finish. Didn't know how to ask if she'd ever been happy, if there was any hope waiting for me on the other side of this. She looked at me with those dead eyes, the ones that had accepted her cage so long ago, and said the most devastating thing I'd ever heard. Happiness is for Jannah, Amira. This life is about sabr. Patience. Endurance. Submission. She touched my cheek with cold fingers. The sooner you accept this, the easier your life will be. She left me there, her words hanging in the air like a noose. Submission. That's what my name meant in Arabic, wasn't it? Islam. Submission to Allah's will. But whose will was I really submitting to? God's? Or my father's? Or a system built by men who decided that women were worth half a testimony, half an inheritance, and absolutely no say in who touched their bodies? The questions were poison. I knew it. But I couldn't stop drinking them. 6 weeks before the wedding, I had what I can only describe as a complete spiritual breakdown. It was 2 a.m. The house was silent except for my father's snoring echoing from down the hall, even his sleep sounded authoritative. I was on my prayer mat, having just finished Tahajjud, the optional night prayer that supposedly brings you closest to Allah. I'd prayed for an hour. Begged. Wept. Prostrated until my forehead was bruised. And I felt nothing. Less than nothing. Like I was performing for an empty theater, words evaporating into darkness. Something inside me snapped. I stood up, ripped off my hijab, and looked at myself in the mirror. My hair fell around my shoulders, long, dark, the only part of me strangers weren't allowed to see. I stared at my reflection, at this girl I barely recognized, and I started laughing. Not happy laughter. The kind of laughter that lives right next to screaming. Where are you? I whispered to the ceiling, to Allah, to whatever cosmic force was supposedly orchestrating my misery. I've done everything. Everything. 5 prayers. Fasting. Modesty. Obedience. I've been good. I've been so good. And you're letting them destroy me. Silence. Say something. My voice rose, dangerous in the quiet house. Give me a sign. A dream. Anything. Just show me you're there. Nothing. I sank to the floor, hugging my knees, rocking back and forth. I'm so alone, I sobbed, the words ripping out of me. I'm so alone and you don't care. You don't care. You don't. And then, in that moment of absolute desperation, I did something unforgivable. I stopped praying to Allah. Not dramatically. Not with a declaration. I just stopped. Because what's the point of talking to someone who never talks back? What's the point of loving someone who watches you suffer and does nothing? The emptiness that followed should have terrified me. Instead, it felt almost like relief. Like finally admitting a relationship was dead instead of performing CPR on a corpse. But relief doesn't last when you're in a cage. The engagement party was held at our estate, 300 guests, all dressed in their finest, celebrating my imprisonment like it was a joyous occasion. I wore a golden dress that weighed more than my future, makeup painted on my face like a mask, henna covering my hands in intricate patterns that looked like beautiful chains. Hassan stood beside me, this stranger who would own me in 6 weeks. He smiled for the cameras. Squeezed my hand too tight when no one was looking. Leaned in once and whispered, I'm going to enjoy making you obedient. I smiled back because I had to. Inside, I was screaming. That night, after everyone left, after the musicians packed up and the caterers cleaned the courtyard, I stood on my balcony looking down at the marble stones 3 floors below. And I thought about jumping. Not seriously. Not a plan. Just the thought. The whisper of escape. The knowledge that I could end this if I wanted to. That I had that power, at least. The fact that I was thinking it at all should have horrified me. Instead, it felt like the only honest thought I'd had in months. Is this really all there is? I asked the night sky, not praying anymore, just wondering. Is this what life is? Just enduring until you die? The stars didn't answer. Why would they? Nothing else had. I went back inside, locked my balcony doors, and cried myself to sleep for the 47th night in a row. But here's what I didn't know, what I couldn't know in my desperation. Sometimes silence isn't absence. Sometimes God is quiet because He's preparing something so big, so impossible, so world-shattering that if He told you beforehand, you'd never believe Him. Sometimes the darkest night comes right before a dawn you never saw coming. And my dawn was about to break in the most impossible way imaginable. Through a forbidden book I had no business reading. The Bible came into my life the way most dangerous things do, quietly, innocently, wrapped in circumstances I didn't orchestrate. It was hidden inside a box of old English textbooks. Let me explain. For weeks before my wedding, for weeks before I would legally become Hassan's property, my mother decided I needed to improve my English. Not for education. Not for personal growth. But because Hassan's business partners were European, and I needed to be able to entertain appropriately without embarrassing him. The irony of teaching a prisoner to speak more languages wasn't lost on me. She hired a tutor, a Pakistani woman named Mrs. Khalida who'd lived in London for 20 years before moving to the Gulf. Proper. Professional. Safe. Or so my parents thought. Mrs. Khalida came every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. We'd sit in the formal living room, the one with the expensive furniture no one was allowed to actually use, and she'd drill me on vocabulary, grammar, conversation. She was kind but distant, the way employees learn to be in households like mine. Never too familiar. Never asking questions. But on her 3rd visit, something changed. We were working through a reading comprehension exercise when my voice cracked mid-sentence. I'd been holding it together so well, performing normalcy like a trained actress, but that afternoon the mask slipped. 1 tear. That's all it took. 1 tear sliding down my cheek, and suddenly I couldn't stop. Mrs. Khalida set down her book. Looked at me with eyes that had seen too much of the world to be fooled by pretty lies. Amira, she said quietly, glancing toward the door to make sure we were alone. Are you all right? I wanted to say yes. Wanted to paste on my smile and continue pretending. But I was so tired. So desperately tired of pretending. I don't want to get married, I whispered, the confession tumbling out like a dam breaking. I don't want this. Any of this. But no one will listen. No one cares. I pray and Allah doesn't answer, and I covered my mouth, horrified at what I'd said, at the blasphemy of admitting God's silence. Mrs. Khalida was quiet for a long moment. Then she did something that changed my entire life. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small book with a worn leather cover. Placed it on the table between us. I probably shouldn't do this, she said, her voice barely audible. But I can't watch another girl suffocate without at least offering her air. I stared at the book. Even before I could read the gold lettering on the cover, something in my stomach twisted with recognition. With dread. With terrible, electric curiosity. Holy Bible. My hand jerked back like I'd been burned. Are you insane? I hissed, looking frantically toward the door. If my father finds this, if anyone sees. I know. Mrs. Khalida's face was calm, but I saw fear flickering in her eyes. The same fear I lived with every day. That's why I'm putting it back in my bag right now. But Amira, listen to me carefully. She leaned forward. I was like you once. Trapped. Desperate. Praying to Allah and hearing nothing. And then someone gave me this book. And I found something different. Someone different. You're a Christian? The word tasted foreign, dangerous, like speaking a curse. I'm someone who found truth, she said carefully. And truth set me free. Not externally, I still have to be careful, still have to hide, but inside, here, she touched her chest, I'm free. For the first time in my life, I'm free. She placed the Bible back in her bag, zipped it shut. Looked at me with an intensity that made my breath catch. I'm leaving it in the box of textbooks I brought you. The one in the corner. If you want to look at it, you can. If you don't, I'll take it with me next time and we'll never speak of this again. She gathered her things, preparing to leave. But Amira? If you're going to read it, be smart. Be careful. And start with the book of John. Chapter 8, verse 32. She left before I could respond, before I could ask her what she meant, before I could process the absolute insanity of what had just happened. I sat frozen on the couch for 10 minutes, staring at that cardboard box in the corner like it contained a live grenade. It might as well have. In my world, possessing a Bible was more than forbidden, it was haram, filth, corruption, the literal work of Satan. I'd been taught since childhood that Christians had corrupted the original message of God, that their scriptures were lies, that even touching their book could contaminate you. And yet, if you're going to read it. Mrs. Khalida's words echoed in my head. She'd said if, which meant I had a choice. I could ignore it. Pretend this never happened. Continue my path toward marriage and misery and a life of silent desperation. Or I could look. Just look. What harm could looking do? I waited until midnight. My parents were asleep. The house servants had retired to their quarters. Hassan had called earlier, his nightly check-in, making sure I was being good, and wouldn't call again until morning. I was alone. I locked my bedroom door. Drew the curtains. Turned on only my bedside lamp, keeping the room dim enough that passing servants wouldn't notice light under my door. Then I opened the cardboard box. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely move the textbooks aside. There, at the bottom, wrapped in a plastic bag like contraband, which it was, lay the Bible. I pulled it out. The leather was soft, worn from use. Someone had loved this book. Read it so many times the spine was cracked, pages dog-eared. I opened it randomly, and my eyes fell on red letters. Words spoken by someone named Jesus. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Something in my chest cracked. Weary. I was weary down to my bones. Burdened by expectations, by rules, by a future I couldn't escape. And this Jesus, the one Christians claimed was God, the one we'd been taught was just a prophet, nothing more, was offering rest? I flipped to the book of John like Mrs. Khalida had said. Chapter 8. Verse 32. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Free. That word detonated something in my soul. I started reading. Couldn't stop. John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Chapter 3. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. Whoever. Not just Jews. Not just Arabs. Not just men. Whoever. I read about Jesus touching lepers that society had abandoned. Talking to women that culture had dismissed. Defending an adulteress from stones and condemnation. Calling hypocritical religious leaders whitewashed tombs. Claiming to be the way, the truth, the life. And I read his promise, I no longer call you servants. Instead, I have called you friends. Friends. Allah had 99 names in Islam, the powerful, the compeller, the avenger, the just. Beautiful names. Fearsome names. But never friend. Never father. The relationship was master and slave. Creator and creation. Always distant. Always hierarchical. But Jesus was calling people friends? I read until far prayer echoed across the city. Read until my eyes burned and my hands cramped. Read until the words blurred together and my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. Because everything I was reading contradicted everything I'd been taught. And it felt more true than anything I'd ever known. Over the next 3 weeks, that Bible became my addiction. My secret rebellion. My lifeline. I read it hidden under my covers with a flashlight. In the bathroom with the shower running to mask any sound. During prayer times when everyone assumed I was being pious, I'd have pages tucked inside my Quran, reading Jesus's words while pretending to read Arabic. The risk was insane. If my father found it, if my brothers saw it, if Hassan somehow discovered it, I didn't want to imagine the consequences. But I couldn't stop. Because for the first time in my life, I felt like someone was actually speaking to me. Not at me. Not commanding me. Not demanding submission. Speaking. Personally. Intimately. Jesus's words in Matthew wrecked me. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground outside your Father's care. And even the very hairs of your head are all numbered. So don't be afraid, you are worth more than many sparrows. I sat on my bathroom floor, reading those words over and over, tears streaming down my face. Worth. I was worth something. Not as a daughter who could secure business connections. Not as a wife who could produce heirs. Not as a body that needed to be covered and controlled. Just, worth. Because I existed. Because God, this God who called himself Father, cared about me. But the verse that broke me completely was in John chapter 10, verse 10. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life, and have it to the full. Full life. I looked around my golden cage, my expensive prison, and realized I'd never been alive. Not really. I'd been existing. Surviving. Performing. But living? I didn't even know what that meant. And that's when the war started inside me. The internal battle between everything I'd been taught and everything I was discovering. Between loyalty to my family and hunger for truth. Between the safety of the known and the terror of the unknown. Late one night, 2 weeks before my wedding, I did something that would have gotten me killed. I knelt beside my bed, and instead of facing Mecca, instead of reciting Arabic prayers, I spoke in English. In my own words. To Jesus. I don't know if you're real, I whispered into the darkness. I don't know if you can hear me. But if you can, if you're who this book says you are, I need you to show me. Because I'm about to marry a man I don't love, live a life I never chose, and die without ever really living. And if there's something more, if there's truth, I need to know. Even if it costs me everything. My voice broke on the last word. Please. Please. Just show me you're real. I waited in the silence, half expecting nothing, the way I'd expected nothing from Allah for months. But this time, the silence felt different. Not empty. Pregnant. Like something was about to be born. I fell asleep there, on my knees, the Bible tucked under my pillow, my heart cracked wide open. And that night, Jesus came to me in a dream. I need you to understand something before I tell you what happened next. I was not a mystical person. I didn't believe in visions or supernatural experiences. In Islam, we were taught that prophetic revelation had ended with Muhammad. Dreams were just dreams, random firings of neurons, your subconscious processing the day's events. So when I tell you what I'm about to tell you, know that I fought against believing it. Know that I spent days trying to rationalize it, explain it away, convince myself it was stress or exhaustion or my desperate mind manufacturing hope. But I couldn't. Because what happened that night wasn't a dream. It was an encounter. I was standing in a desert. Not metaphorically, I could feel sand beneath my bare feet, fine and warm, shifting as I moved. The sky above me was the color of twilight, that liminal space between day and night, purple bleeding into gold. And I was alone. Completely, utterly alone in an endless expanse of nothing. The panic hit immediately. That primal fear of abandonment, of being lost in a place with no landmarks, no direction, no hope of finding home. I turned in circles, my white nightgown whipping around my legs and wind I couldn't feel on my skin. Hello? My voice sounded small, swallowed by the vastness. Is anyone there? And then I saw it. A light. Not the harsh, clinical brightness of fluorescent bulbs. Not the flickering orange of fire. This was different, it was alive, pulsing like a heartbeat, warm and golden and somehow personal. It was coming from behind me. I turned slowly, afraid of what I might see, more afraid of what I might not. There was a man standing 20 feet away. He was dressed simply, a white robe, undyed, the kind of garment that looked ancient and timeless simultaneously. His feet were bare. His hands hung at his sides, relaxed, non-threatening. But it was his face that made my breath catch. I can't describe it properly. I've tried 1,000 times since, and words fail every time. It wasn't that he was conventionally handsome, though he was beautiful. It wasn't his features, though they were kind and strong and somehow both masculine and gentle. It was his eyes. They held everything. Infinite sadness and infinite joy. Complete knowledge and complete compassion. When he looked at me, and he was looking at me, directly at me, into me, I felt utterly exposed and utterly safe simultaneously. I knew, without being told, without any introduction, exactly who he was. Jesus, I whispered, and the name felt like coming home to a place I'd never been. He smiled. Not the polite smile of social courtesy. Not the cruel smile of my father's satisfaction. This was the smile of someone seeing a lost child finally found. Of a friend reunited after a long absence. Of love, pure, uncomplicated, overwhelming love. Amira. He said my name, and it sounded different than it ever had before. Not like a possession. Like a treasure. My beloved daughter. Daughter. I started crying. Couldn't help it. Tears streaming down my face, my whole body shaking with sobs I couldn't control. I'm not anyone's daughter, I choked out. I'm just property. A burden. Something to be managed and married off and. You are my daughter. He took a step closer. The light around him intensified, and I realized it wasn't coming from some external source. It was emanating from him, from inside him, like he was made of light itself. Before you were in your mother's womb, I knew you. Before your father named you, I called you mine. Before you ever spoke my name, I loved you. But I'm Muslim, I said desperately, illogically, like I needed to warn him away from making a mistake. I've prayed to Allah my whole life. I've rejected you. We're taught you're not God, just a prophet, and I believed that, And yet you called out to me. He was closer now, only a few feet away, and I could see his hands. There were scars there. Perfect circles in his palms, healed but visible, marks that looked like, oh God. The crucifixion. The story Christians told. He'd been nailed to a cross. For me? Why? The question ripped out of me. Why would you come? Why would you answer? I'm nobody. I'm nothing. You are everything to me. His voice was quiet, but it filled the entire desert, the entire universe. Amira, I died for you. Not for who you should be. Not for who your father wants you to be. For you. The real you. The you that questions and doubts and feels alone. The you that's terrified and angry and desperate. I see her. I love her. And I'm here to set her free. Free? I laughed bitterly through my tears. I'm getting married in 2 weeks to a man who wants to break me. My father will kill me if I refuse. There's no freedom. There's no way out. I'm trapped, and not even you can. Can't I? He raised his hand, the one with the scar, and suddenly the desert around us changed. I saw myself at the wedding. Dressed in white that looked like a burial shroud. Hassan's hand gripping mine too tight. My father watching with satisfaction. My mother with empty acceptance. I saw years stretching out, babies I didn't want to have, abuse I couldn't escape, a slow death of the soul while my body kept breathing. This is one path, Jesus said gently. The path of fear. Of choosing survival over life. The vision shifted. Now I saw fire. My father's face, twisted with rage. The Bible in his hands. Gasoline. A match. Pain beyond imagination. But beyond the flames, a door opening. Light pouring through. Freedom on the other side, but the cost. This is another path, he said. The path of faith. Of choosing life over survival. The vision dissolved, and we were back in the desert, alone, the weight of the choice crushing my chest. I don't understand, I sobbed. You're asking me to choose suffering? I'm asking you to choose me. He knelt down, coming to my level, and gently took my hands in his. His touch was warm, solid, real. Amira, the suffering is coming either way. But one suffering leads to death, a slow, quiet death of everything you were meant to be. The other suffering leads through fire, to resurrection. I'm afraid. My voice was barely a whisper. I know. He squeezed my hands. That's why I'm not sending you alone. I went through the fire first, remember? And I'm walking through yours with you. Every step. Every moment. Every breath. What if I fail? What if I'm not strong enough? You're not. He smiled at my shocked expression. You're not strong enough. But I am. And my strength is perfected in your weakness. Amira, I'm not asking you to be strong. I'm asking you to trust me. I looked into his eyes, those impossible eyes that held galaxies and intimacy simultaneously, and felt something shift inside me. A knowing. A certainty that defied logic. This was real. He was real. And everything I'd been taught, everything I'd believed, every religious system I'd tried to find God in, it had all been empty because I'd been looking in the wrong place. God wasn't in the distant heaven of Allah, unreachable and austere. He was here. Kneeling in the sand. Holding my hands. Calling me daughter. Offering me life even if it cost me everything. What do? I asked. Follow me. He stood, pulling me gently to my feet. The path won't be easy. Your family will reject you. Your community will persecute you. You'll lose everything you've known. But Amira, he cupped my face in his scarred hands, his thumbs wiping away my tears, you'll gain everything you've never had. Identity. Purpose. Love that never fails. And eternal life that starts now, not in some distant paradise after death. I want that, I breathed. I want you. Then you have me. He pulled me into his arms, and I collapsed against his chest, sobbing, not in despair this time, but in relief. In overwhelming, devastating relief. I will never leave you, Amira. Never forsake you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not consume you. Because I am with you. I don't know how long I stood there, held by the God I'd never known existed, feeling loved for the first time in my entire life. Time didn't seem to work normally in that place. But eventually, he pulled back, his hands on my shoulders. You're going to wake up soon, he said. And when you do, you'll have a choice to make. You can pretend this never happened, go back to sleep, marry Hassan, survive. Or you can choose life. Choose truth. Choose me. The choice is yours, beloved. I will not force you. Love never does. I choose you, I said without hesitation. Whatever it costs. I choose you. His smile was radiant, overwhelming, a sunrise after the longest night. Then watch what I do. Because I'm about to show your family, show everyone, that I am who I say I am. And that nothing, can stop me from saving my daughter. He touched my forehead with his scarred hand, and I felt power flow through me, electric, warm, alive. Like something dormant inside me was suddenly awakening. Go in peace, Amira. And when the fire comes, remember, I am with you. Always. I woke up gasping, sitting bolt upright in bed, my nightgown soaked with sweat. Dawn was breaking outside my window. The call to Fajr prayer echoed across the city, the same call I'd heard every morning of my life. But this morning, it sounded different. Empty. Like a recording played for people who didn't know the DJ had left the building. Because I'd met the real thing. And once you encounter living water, you can't go back to drinking sand. I looked at the Bible still tucked under my pillow. Pulled it out. Opened it to a random page, and my eyes fell on Isaiah chapter 43, verses 1 to 2. Do not fear, for I have redeemed you, I have summoned you by name, you are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned, the flames will not set you ablaze. The exact words Jesus had spoken to me. My hands started shaking. It was real. It had been real. And I had just pledged my life to Jesus Christ, in a Muslim household, in a Muslim country, 12 days before my forced wedding to a man who would destroy me if he ever found out. I should have been terrified. Instead, for the first time in my entire life, I felt peace. The kind of peace that doesn't make sense. That exists in the middle of chaos. That knows a storm is coming but trusts the one who controls the wind. I knelt beside my bed, tears streaming down my face, and prayed my first real prayer as a Christian. Jesus, I'm yours. Whatever happens next, I'm yours. Show them who you are. Show them you're real. And please, my voice broke, please don't let me burn alone. In the silence that followed, I felt it. His presence. Not visible like in the dream, but there. Solid. Unshakable. A promise kept. I am with you. Always. I smiled through my tears. The war was about to begin. But I wasn't fighting alone anymore. The Bible burned a hole in my room for 8 days. I'd hidden it in the false bottom of my jewelry box, the one place I knew my brothers would never look, the one place my father's pride wouldn't let him dig through. Every morning I'd check to make sure it was still there, still safe, my heart hammering against my ribs. But I knew the clock was ticking. 4 days before the wedding, Hassan came to our house for a family dinner, a civilized word for a performance where I had to play the role of grateful bride while this stranger who would own me in 96 hours discussed business with my father over lamb and rice. He kept looking at me throughout the meal. Not the way you look at a person. The way you look at an acquisition. Something you've purchased and are waiting to unwrap. After dinner, he cornered me in the hallway while my mother was in the kitchen and my father was in his study. His hand shot out, gripping my wrist, pulling me close enough that I could smell his cologne, expensive, cloying, suffocating. "Are you ready to be my wife?" he asked, his voice low, intimate in a way that made my skin crawl. "Yes," I lied, because what else could I say? His grip tightened. "I've heard rumors about girls who seem obedient but rebel in secret. Girls who think they can maintain their own wills after marriage." His eyes went cold. "You're not one of those girls, are you, Amira?" Every instinct screamed at me to submit, to placate, to survive. But something different rose up in my chest. Something that hadn't been there before that night in the desert with Jesus. A strength that wasn't mine. A defiance that felt like worship. I looked him directly in the eyes, something I'd never done before, something proper Muslim girls weren't supposed to do, and said quietly, "I am exactly who God created me to be." His face darkened. For a second, I thought he might hit me right there. But my mother's footsteps approached, and he released my wrist, smoothed his expression back into pleasant neutrality. "We'll discuss your attitude after the wedding," he said with a smile that was really a threat. He left 30 minutes later. I went to my room, locked the door, pulled out the Bible, and read until my eyes burned. The explosion came 2 days before the wedding. I should have been more careful. Should have heard my brother Ahmad's footsteps in the hallway. Should have hidden the Bible faster when my door suddenly burst open. I'd forgotten to lock it after using the bathroom. But I didn't. Ahmad stood in my doorway, frozen, his eyes locked on the book in my hands. The leather cover. The gold lettering. The cross embossed on the front. For 3 seconds, we just stared at each other. Then his face contorted with rage and horror. "Ali Baba," he screamed, the word like a siren splitting the evening silence. "Ali Baba, come now." I shoved the Bible under my pillow, useless, too late, and stood up, my legs trembling so badly I could barely hold myself upright. My father's heavy footsteps pounded up the marble stairs. My mother's lighter ones followed. Within seconds, my entire family was crowding into my room, my father, my mother, both brothers, even the house servants peering fearfully from the hallway. "What is it?" my father demanded, looking between Ahmad and me. Ahmad pointed at my bed with a shaking finger. "She has a Bible." I saw it. She was reading the Christian book. The air left the room. My father's face went through a series of expressions, confusion, disbelief, and then something far worse. A coldness so absolute it was like watching a man die and a monster wake up in his skin. "Is this true?" His voice was quiet. Controlled. The kind of quiet that preceded volcanic eruptions. I could have lied. Could have said Ahmad was mistaken, that it was an English textbook, that he'd seen wrong. Could have tried to salvage something, anything. But I was so tired of lying. And Jesus had asked me to trust him. Yes. My voice came out stronger than I expected. "It's true." My mother gasped. Ahmad looked vindicated. My other brother, Khalid, stepped back like I'd physically struck him. My father's hand moved with terrible precision. He reached under my pillow, pulled out the Bible, held it up like it was contaminated. Like it was proof of a crime punishable by death. Which, in this house, it was. "Where did you get this?" he asked, each word cut from ice. "That doesn't matter. Where did you get this?" He roared the question, his composure shattering. "Someone gave it to me. Someone who cared enough about my soul to tell me the truth." "Truth?" He laughed, a sound without humor, without humanity. "This is corruption. Blasphemy. The work of Satan himself. Have I raised you for 17 years, given you everything, only to have you become an apostate? You've given me nothing, I said, and the words tumbled out like water breaking through a dam. You've given me a cage. A prison. A life where I don't get to choose anything, not what I believe, not who I marry, not even what I think. You call it protection. You call it guidance. But it's control. It's slavery. And I'm done. My mother started crying. Loud, dramatic sobs that sounded more like fear than sadness. Ahmad and Khalid looked at me like I'd transformed into something monstrous. But my father went perfectly still. Done, he repeated softly. You're done? I'm not marrying Hassan. I'm not living this life anymore. I took a breath, knowing the next words would detonate what little remained of my world. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. And nothing you do is going to change that. The slap came so fast I didn't see it. Just felt my head snap to the side, tasted blood where my teeth cut my cheek, felt pain exploding across my face. You will never speak that name in my house. My father's voice was shaking now. You will burn this book. You will beg Allah's forgiveness. You will marry Hassan in 2 days and spend the rest of your life repenting for this disgrace. Do you understand me? I touched my bleeding lip. Looked at my father, this man who was supposed to protect me, love me, cherish me. And I saw clearly for the first time what Jesus had shown me in the desert. This wasn't love. It had never been love. It was ownership dressed up as devotion. Control masquerading as care. No, I said simply. His eyes widened. What did you say? I said no. I won't burn the Bible. I won't deny Jesus. And I won't marry Hassan. You can hit me again. You can lock me in this room. You can do whatever you want to my body. But my soul belongs to Jesus Christ and you can't touch it. For a moment, just a heartbeat, I saw something flicker in my mother's eyes. Recognition. Memory. Like maybe, once upon a time, she'd felt this same defiance, this same desire for freedom, before they crushed it out of her. But it died as quickly as it came. My father turned to Ahmad. Get the gasoline from the garage. And matches. My blood went cold. Baba, no, even Khalid looked scared now. She wants to worship the Christian God? My father's voice was eerily calm again. Then let her meet him. We'll see if her Jesus saves her when she's burning. He meant it. I saw it in his eyes. He was going to burn me alive in our courtyard, and my family, my mother, my brothers, would let him do it because honor was more important than my life. Because reputation mattered more than murder. Because in their world, I'd committed the ultimate sin, and death was mercy compared to apostasy. Ahmad ran from the room. My mother backed into the corner, still sobbing. Khalid stood frozen, conflicted but ultimately obedient. My father grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in like claws, and dragged me toward the door. Jesus, I prayed silently as he pulled me down the stairs, each marble step like a countdown to my execution. Jesus, you promised. You said you'd be with me. You said the flames wouldn't consume me. Please. Please don't let me burn alone. The courtyard was the same place we'd held my engagement party 3 weeks ago. Where 300 people had celebrated what they thought was my future. Now it was empty except for my family and the death waiting for me. Ahmad had poured gasoline in a circle on the marble stones. The smell made me gag, made my eyes water. He handed my father the Bible and a box of matches. This is your last chance, my father said, holding up the Bible. Burn this book. Renounce your apostasy. Beg Allah's forgiveness. And you can still marry Hassan, still have a life. I looked at the Bible. At this book that had introduced me to Jesus. That had shown me what real love looked like. That had given me the first hope I'd ever known. Then I looked at my father. No. He threw the Bible into the center of the gasoline circle. Lit a match. The flame glowed orange in the darkness. Then burn with it. He shoved me forward. I stumbled, fell to my knees in the center of the circle, right next to the Bible. Gasoline soaked into my nightgown. The smell was overwhelming, chemical, deadly. My father dropped the match. The fire erupted in a perfect circle around me, flames shooting up 10 feet high, surrounding me completely. The heat was instant, suffocating, and I heard my mother screaming, heard my brothers shouting, heard my father's voice reciting prayers to Allah above the roar of the flames. But here's the thing. The fire didn't touch me. I was kneeling in the center of an inferno, surrounded by flames that should have been incinerating me, should have been burning through my gasoline-soaked clothes, should have been melting my skin. But I felt nothing. No heat. No pain. Nothing. I opened my eyes, when had I closed them, and saw the impossible. The flames were burning all around me, consuming the gasoline, crackling and roaring. But there was a space around me, maybe 3 feet in diameter, where the fire stopped. Like there was an invisible wall, a barrier the flames couldn't cross. And in that space, standing right beside me, was Jesus. Not in a vision this time. Not in a dream. There. Solid. Real. His hand on my shoulder. His presence like a shield made of light. I told you, he said gently, his voice cutting through the chaos. The flames will not consume you. I looked down at the Bible lying next to me. It should have been ash by now. The gasoline had pooled around it. The fire was raging. But it wasn't burning. Not a single page was singed. Not even the leather cover was marked. Pick it up, Jesus said. I reached down with shaking hands and lifted the Bible. It was completely untouched. Perfectly intact. Impossible. Show them, he said. Show them who I am. I stood up, holding the Bible above my head, and walked through the wall of fire. The flames parted around me like water around a stone. Didn't touch my clothes. Didn't burn my hair. Didn't leave a single mark on my skin. I stepped out of the circle and stood before my family, holding the Bible that had survived an inferno, not a hair on my head singed. My mother had collapsed to the ground. Ahmad was backing away, his face white with terror. Khalid had fallen to his knees. And my father, my powerful, controlling, unshakable father, was staring at me like he was seeing a ghost. This is Jesus Christ, I said, my voice ringing clear in the sudden silence. The one you tried to keep from me. The one you said was powerless. The God who just walked through fire with me and didn't let me burn. And he is real. He is alive. And he loves me more than you ever could. Behind me, the fire was dying down, the gasoline consumed. But the Bible in my hands was pristine. Untouched. Unburned. Undeniable. My father's voice came out in a hoarse whisper. What are you? I'm free, I said. Finally, truly free. And then I walked past him, past my frozen family, through the house I'd grown up in, and out the front door into the night. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what would happen next. But I knew Jesus was with me. And that was enough. I ran through the streets with nothing but a Bible and the nightgown on my back. No money. No phone, my father had controlled that, monitored every call, every message. No identification documents. No plan. Just my bare feet slapping against pavement that was still warm from the day's heat, and the weight of Jesus's presence surrounding me like armor. The adrenaline kept me moving for the first 20 minutes. Then reality crashed in. Where was I going? It was past midnight in a city where a young woman alone was either a prostitute or a target, sometimes both. Every passing car made my heart leap into my throat. Every man walking the street made me pull my nightgown tighter, made me wish I'd grabbed my abaya before running, made me realize how exposed, how vulnerable, how utterly screwed I actually was. I ducked into an alley between two buildings, pressed my back against the cold concrete, and tried to think through the panic clawing at my chest. My father would come after me. Of course he would. Not because he loved me, tonight had obliterated any illusion of that, but because I was a loose end. A scandal waiting to happen. A stain on his pristine reputation. And Hassan. Oh God, Hassan. What would he do when he found out his bride had become an apostate? When word spread through the community, and it would spread, these things always did, that I'd rejected Islam, embraced Christianity, survived a fire that should have killed me? I would be hunted. By my family. By Hassan's family. By religious authorities who saw apostasy as a crime punishable by death. By a society that would rather murder me than admit maybe, just maybe, Jesus Christ was who he said he was. Jesus, I whispered into the darkness, clutching the Bible to my chest. I did what you asked. I chose you. I trusted you. Now what? What do I do now? A cat knocked over a trash can somewhere deeper in the alley, and I nearly screamed. I was so scared. So alone. So completely out of my depth. And then I remembered Mrs. Khalida. The tutor who'd given me the Bible. Who'd said she was free. Who'd taken a massive risk to plant truth in my hands. If anyone could help me, if anyone would understand. But I didn't have her phone number. Didn't know where she lived. My father had hired her, all the contact information was his. I closed my eyes, trying to remember. Had she mentioned anything? Any detail, any clue? I lived in London for 20 years before moving back. I teach at 3 different households. I attend. And then it hit me. During one lesson, when I'd asked about her weekend, she'd mentioned going to a fellowship on Friday evenings. I'd assumed she meant a mosque gathering, but now I understood. She'd been talking about a church. A secret church. An underground gathering of believers who couldn't worship openly. But where? Where would they meet? I sat in that alley for an hour, praying, thinking, watching the shadows shift as the moon moved across the sky. And then, like a whisper in my spirit, I remembered something else she'd said. There's a medical clinic on Al-Wada Street. They're kind. They help people who have nowhere else to go. The way she'd paused. The emphasis on kind. The meaningful look she'd given me. It was a message. A breadcrumb left by someone who'd hoped I might need it someday. Al-Wada Street was 3 miles away. Through neighborhoods I'd never walked. Past dangers I'd been sheltered from my entire life. But what choice did I have? I started walking. The city at night was a different creature than the one I'd known from behind tinted car windows. It was alive in ways that were both terrifying and mesmerizing. Street vendors packing up their stalls. Laborers heading home from night shifts. Groups of men smoking shisha outside cafes, their laughter cutting through the humid air. Every single one of them looked at me. A girl alone. Young. In a nightgown. Carrying a book. Barefoot. I might as well have been wearing a sign that said "Victim here." A car slowed beside me. The window rolled down. A man's voice, slick with false concern, "Are you lost, sister? Need a ride?" I kept walking, eyes forward, heart hammering. "Hey, I'm talking to you. Leave her alone." Another voice, older, authoritative. I glanced sideways and saw an elderly shopkeeper standing in his doorway, a broom in his hands like a weapon. "Keep moving, girl. Fast." I moved fast. 2 more cars. 3 men on foot who followed me for 4 blocks before a police car turned the corner and they scattered. A woman who stopped me, looked at my face, still bruised from my father's slap, and pressed money into my hand before hurrying away like she was afraid of catching my misfortune. I cried as I walked. Silent tears streaming down my face, my feet bleeding from cuts I couldn't feel yet, my body running on pure adrenaline and prayer. Jesus, protect me. Jesus, guide me. Jesus, don't let me die in this street. I prayed it like a mantra. Like a lifeline. Like the only thing standing between me and absolute collapse. And somehow, I can't explain it any other way, I made it to El Wada Street. The medical clinic was small, unmarked except for a green crescent symbol above the door. It was closed, dark, locked up for the night. I sat down on the steps and buried my face in my hands. What now? Wait until morning? Hope someone would come? Hope my father's men wouldn't find me first? You're going to get yourself killed sitting there. I jerked my head up. A woman stood at the bottom of the steps, late 30s, wearing a simple black abaya, her face visible, her eyes sharp and assessing. The clinic's closed, she said, not unkindly. What are you doing here? I opened my mouth. Closed it. Didn't know what to say that wouldn't sound insane. She climbed 2 steps. Stopped. Her eyes fell on the Bible in my lap. Everything changed. Her posture shifted from cautious to alert. She looked up and down the street, checking for watchers, then moved closer. Who sent you? She whispered urgently. Mrs. Khalida. She was my tutor. She gave me, I held up the Bible. The woman's eyes widened. The one who survived the fire? My breath caught. How do you know about that? Word travels fast among believers. Someone saw the flames from their window, called Mrs. Khalida, told her what happened. She's been praying, we've all been praying, the woman grabbed my hand. You need to come with me. Now. Before someone sees you. Who are you? Someone who knows what it costs to follow Jesus in this place. My name is Fatima. And you, Amira, are now the most famous Christian in the city, which means you're also the most wanted. She pulled me to my feet, wrapped her own abaya around my shoulders to cover my nightgown, and led me quickly through a maze of side streets I couldn't track. We ended up at a small apartment building. 3rd floor. A door that opened before we even knocked, like someone had been watching for us. Inside was a room full of people. 20, maybe 30 believers. Men and women. Young and old. Arabs and foreigners. All gathered in secret, all risking everything, all looking at me with expressions ranging from awe to fear to overwhelming compassion. And there, in the center of them all, was Mrs. Khalida. She crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled me into her arms. I collapsed. Just completely fell apart. Sobbing into her shoulder, my legs giving out, the weight of the last 6 hours crushing down on me all at once. You're safe, she murmured, holding me tight. You're safe now. Jesus kept his promise. You're alive. You're here. You're safe. They fed me. Gave me clothes, a simple dress, a hijab to wear outside so I wouldn't stand out. Bandaged my bleeding feet. Let me sleep on a couch while they prayed over me in whispers, their hands gently resting on my shoulders, their voices lifting my name to Jesus. When I woke up 6 hours later, dawn was breaking, and Mrs. Khalida was sitting beside me. Your father has men looking for you, she said without preamble. Hassan has offered a reward for information about your whereabouts. And the religious authorities have issued a statement calling you a danger to the community. I sat up slowly, my body aching in places I didn't know could hurt. What do I do? You leave the country. Fatima entered the room, carrying tea and bread. We have connections. Christians who help apostates escape. It's not easy, not safe, but it's possible. We can get you to Jordan first, then potentially Europe or America. How long will that take? 3 weeks, maybe 4. You'll need false documents, safe houses along the way, people willing to risk their lives smuggling you across borders. She set down the tea. Until then, you stay hidden. You trust no one outside this room. And you pray constantly, because one mistake means death. For me or for you? I asked, suddenly understanding. If they find me here, they'll kill all of you too. Mrs. Khalida took my hand. Amira, we knew the cost when we chose this path. Every single person in this fellowship has counted the cost. Some of us have lost families, Others have lost jobs, homes, safety. One woman here lost her children, her ex-husband got custody when the courts found out she was Christian. Another man was beaten so badly he lost hearing in one ear. She squeezed my hand. We don't do this because it's safe. We do it because Jesus is worth it. Because truth is worth it. Because you, sister, you are worth it. I looked around the room at these people. These brave, crazy, beautiful people who were risking everything to save someone they'd never met. Who were living out Jesus's command to love your neighbor in the most literal, costly way imaginable. And I understood something profound. I hadn't just found a new religion. I'd found a family. A real family. The kind that chose you not because of blood or obligation, but because of love. Because of shared suffering. Because of a Savior who'd bled for all of us and made us brothers and sisters in the truest sense. Thank you, I whispered, tears spilling again. Thank you for not letting me burn alone. We never burn alone, Fatima said softly. That's the promise. Jesus walks through every fire with us. And so do we for each other. The next 3 weeks were the longest of my life. I moved between safe houses, 6 different apartments, never staying more than 4 days in one place. I cut my hair short, dyed it black. Learned to walk differently, talk differently, disappear into crowds. I heard stories through the underground network. My father had disowned me publicly, declared me dead, held a funeral with an empty casket to preserve his reputation. Hassan had married someone else, a quick replacement, a girl who wouldn't cause problems. My mother had been hospitalized for exhaustion, which everyone knew meant a breakdown. Part of me grieved for them. The other part knew there was nothing I could have done differently. You can't save people who don't want to be saved. You can't love people into freedom. That's a choice only they can make. I studied the Bible voraciously. Mrs. Khalida taught me Christian doctrine, prayer, what it meant to follow Jesus in practical terms. Other believers shared their testimonies, stories of loss and miracles, persecution and joy, sacrifice and supernatural provision. And every single day, I felt Jesus's presence. Not always in dramatic ways. Sometimes just a peace in the middle of chaos. A verse at exactly the right moment. A feeling of being held when I wanted to fall apart. He kept his promise. He never left me. Not for a second. On the 23rd day, Fatima came to the apartment where I was staying with news. We have your documents. And a route. Tomorrow night, a truck crosses the border carrying medical supplies. You'll be hidden in a compartment underneath. If everything goes right, you'll be in Jordan by dawn. And if everything goes wrong? She looked at me steadily. Then you'll meet Jesus face to face a lot sooner than planned. I laughed despite myself. Despite everything. That's a terrible comfort. It's the only one we have. But she smiled. Pack light. Bring only what you can't live without. I looked around the small room. At the borrowed clothes. The few possessions I'd accumulated. And at the Bible, the one that had survived fire, that had started this entire journey. This, I said, holding it up. This is all I need. The next night, I hugged Mrs. Khalida goodbye. Hugged Fatima. Hugged every believer who'd risked everything to save me. And then I climbed into a dark, cramped compartment underneath a truck, clutching my Bible, and began the journey toward freedom. The real freedom. The kind that starts inside and works its way out. The kind that costs everything and gives back infinitely more. The compartment was pitch black, barely large enough for me to lie on my side, and it smelled like oil and rust and fear. The truck's engine roared to life, vibrations shaking through my entire body, and I pressed my face against the Bible, praying in whispers too quiet for even God to hear. Except he did hear. He always does. The journey to the border took 4 hours. 4 hours of suffocating darkness, of every bump in the road making me think we'd been discovered, of engine sounds that could have been checkpoint soldiers or just my imagination turning terror into noise. When we finally stopped and the compartment opened, I crawled out into the pre-dawn darkness of Jordan, my legs barely able to hold me, my lungs gasping for clean air. A man I'd never met, a Christian with kind eyes and calloused hands, pressed water into my hands and said simply, "Welcome to freedom, sister. Jesus brought you through." I collapsed on the ground and cried. Not sad tears this time. Relief. Overwhelming, devastating, beautiful relief. I'd made it. Against every odd. Despite every threat. Through fire and persecution and a journey that should have killed me a dozen times over. Jesus had kept his promise. That was 3 years ago. If you're watching this now, I'm sitting in a small apartment in Europe. I can't tell you which country for safety reasons, because there are still people looking for me. My father's reach is long, and honor killings don't stop at borders. But I'm alive. I'm free. And I'm more fully myself than I ever was in that golden cage. Let me tell you what my life looks like now, because I need you to understand something. Following Jesus cost me everything, but it gave me infinitely more. I lost my family. Haven't spoken to my mother or brothers in 3 years. Don't know if I ever will again. That grief doesn't go away, it just becomes something you carry, a weight that gets lighter some days and crushes you on others. I lost my wealth. The marble floors and silk dresses and jewelry that cost more than people's lives. Now I work in a coffee shop during the day and study at night to finish my education. My apartment is tiny. My bank account is usually close to empty. I lost my language, in some ways. I dream in English now. Pray in English. Think in English. Arabic feels like a ghost language, beautiful but haunting, connected to a past I can never return to. But listen to what I gained. I gained Jesus. And that's not a cliché, not religious jargon. I mean, I have a relationship with the God of the universe. I talk to him every morning like you'd talk to your best friend. I hear his voice, not audibly usually, but in my spirit, in the pages of scripture, in the quiet moments when I'm still enough to listen. When I'm lonely, he's there. When I'm scared, he's there. When I'm celebrating something small like getting a promotion at the coffee shop, he's there, delighting in my joy like a father who actually loves his daughter. I gained a family. Not the one I was born into, but the one Jesus gave me. A church full of believers from every nation, every background, every story. We gather every Sunday, and some of us are refugees like me, some are former Muslims, some grew up Christian but never understood grace until they met someone who'd lost everything for it. We cry together. Laugh together. Share our last bits of money when someone can't make rent. Pray over each other's nightmares and visa applications and job interviews. This is what the body of Christ actually looks like when it's not performing for cameras or building empires. It's messy and beautiful and real. I gained purpose. I'm training to work with refugees, with women escaping situations like mine. Because I know what it's like to be trapped. I know what it costs to run. And I know who walks through the fire with you when you do. Every woman I help escape, every person I tell about Jesus, every testimony I share, it's not just my story anymore. It's his story. The story of a God who doesn't sit in distant heaven issuing commands, but who climbs down into our mess, into our suffering, and says, "I'm with you. Let me carry this." And I gain joy. Real joy. Not happiness, that comes and goes depending on circumstances. But joy that exists even in the middle of hard things. Joy that knows the end of the story. Joy that's tasted resurrection and can't be convinced that death has the final word. Some mornings I wake up in my tiny apartment, make cheap coffee, open my Bible, the same one that survived the fire, pages now worn from constant reading, and I feel so full I could burst. Because I'm free. Not externally, I still look over my shoulder, still can't post my face on social media, still live with the reality that someone might find me someday. But inside? In my soul? I'm free in ways I never knew were possible. Now let me talk directly to you. Because you didn't stumble onto this video by accident. You didn't watch for 45 minutes because you were bored. Jesus orchestrated this moment, this encounter, because he has something to say to you. If you're a Muslim watching this, and my story terrifies you, good. It should. Because I'm asking you to consider something that could cost you everything. But I'm also telling you that the God you've been praying to in ritual and obligation is not the God who created you. Allah demands submission. Jesus offers relationship. Allah requires you to earn your way to paradise through good deeds and perfect obedience. Jesus says, "It's already finished. I paid the price. Just receive it." Allah keeps his distance, unknowable, unreachable. Jesus says, "I call you friends. I know every hair on your head. I died specifically for you. I know what you're thinking." But the Quran says Christians corrupted the gospel. Islam is the final revelation. Muhammad is the last prophet. I thought that too. Until I actually read the Bible. Until I met Jesus. Until I experienced the kind of love that doesn't exist in Islamic theology, a God who doesn't just tolerate you or use you, but who delights in you. Who pursues you. Who would rather die than live without you. Test it. I dare you. Get a Bible, secretly if you have to. Read the Gospel of John. And pray honestly, "Jesus, if you're real, show me. I'm willing to follow truth wherever it leads." Be ready for your life to explode. Because he will answer. He always does. If you're an atheist or agnostic watching this, thinking this is all psychological delusion, I get it. I would have thought the same thing. I was rational, educated, not prone to mystical experiences. But how do you explain the fire that didn't burn? The Bible that survived an Inferno? The supernatural provision and protection that brought me across borders and through dangers that should have killed me 100 times over? You can call it coincidence. You can explain it away. But deep down, you know there's something more. Some ache in your chest that science and philosophy can't quite fill. Some longing for meaning, for purpose, for love that's bigger than human capacity. That's Jesus knocking. And he's relentless. He'll pursue you through logic, through beauty, through suffering, through joy, whatever it takes to get your attention. Don't wait until you have all the answers. You never will. Faith isn't the absence of questions, it's trusting someone bigger than your questions. Just talk to him. "Jesus, if you're there, I'm listening." That's enough. He'll meet you there. And if you're a Christian watching this, maybe someone who grew up in church, who said all the right words but never really counted the cost, I need you to hear this. Following Jesus isn't safe. It's not comfortable. It's not about going to heaven when you die while living a self-centered life until then. It's about dying now. Dying to your plans, your comfort, your reputation, your safety. It's about taking up your cross daily and following him wherever he leads, even if that leads through fire. But here's the beautiful, terrible, glorious truth, it's worth it. It's so worth it. I don't regret a single thing. Not the family I lost. Not the wealth I gave up. Not the comfortable future I walked away from. Because I gained Jesus. And he's better than all of it combined. So stop playing it safe. Stop trying to serve God and money, God and comfort, God and your own glory. Choose him. Fully. Completely. Recklessly. Because the world is full of people trapped in cages, drowning in religions that promise life but deliver death, desperate for someone to show them there's another way. Be that someone. Life so radically, love so extravagantly, trust so courageously that people can't help but ask, "What do you have that I don't?" And then tell them about Jesus. I want to close with a prayer. And I'm going to ask you to do something that might feel uncomfortable, but trust me. If you want what I have, if you want to know Jesus, to experience his love, to be free from the inside out, I want you to pray with me right now. Out loud if you can. In your heart if you can't. Don't worry about whether you're saying the right words. Don't worry about whether you're good enough. You're not. None of us are. That's why Jesus came. Just be honest. Be real. Be you. Here's the prayer. Jesus, I don't have this all figured out. I have questions. I have doubts. I have fears. But I'm tired of living trapped. I'm tired of empty religion. I'm tired of trying to earn love that should be freely given. If you're real, and I'm starting to believe you are, I want to know you. Not just know about you. Actually know you. I'm sorry for living like I'm my own God. For trying to control everything. For running from you because I was afraid of what you might ask me to give up. I believe you died for me. I believe you rose from the dead. I believe you're offering me life, real life, eternal life, the kind that starts now and never ends. I'm saying yes. To you. To truth. To freedom. Whatever it costs. Come into my life. Make me new. Teach me how to follow you. And give me courage for whatever comes next. I'm yours, Jesus. Completely yours. Amen. If you just prayed that prayer, if you meant it, even a little bit, something massive just happened in the spiritual realm. Heaven is celebrating right now. Angels are throwing a party. Because you just moved from death to life, from darkness to light, from slavery to freedom. Welcome to the family, sister. Welcome, brother. Your life just changed forever. Now here's what you do next. First, get a Bible. Read it. Start with the Gospel of John. Let Jesus introduce himself to you through his own words. Second, find other believers. You can't do this alone. Look for a church, a real one, where people actually love Jesus and each other, not just perform religion. If you're in a hostile country, find the underground believers. They're there. Ask God to connect you. He will. Third, tell someone. Not necessarily your most dangerous family member on day one, use wisdom. But find someone you trust and say, I just gave my life to Jesus. Speaking it out loud makes it real. Makes it binding. Makes it powerful. Fourth, expect opposition. I'm not going to lie to you. Following Jesus might cost you everything, just like it cost me. But it will also give you everything that actually matters. And when the fire comes, and it will come in one form or another, remember, you don't burn alone. Jesus walks through every flame with you. And he's promised that they won't consume you. I'm going to leave you with the verse that changed my life. The one Mrs. Khalida told me to read. The one that started this entire journey. John chapter 8, verse 32. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Not religion. Not rules. Not rituals. Truth. Jesus himself. The truth that became flesh and walked among us and died for us and rose again and is alive right now and is saying to you, personally, intimately, I love you. I chose you. I died for you. Now choose me. And watch what I do with your life. Don't wait. Don't put this off. Don't convince yourself you'll deal with spiritual things later when life is less complicated. Later might not come. Tomorrow isn't promised. And heaven and hell are real, eternal, and determined by one choice, what you do with Jesus. Choose life. Choose truth. Choose him. I did. And I've never regretted it for a single second. My name is Amira. I'm a former Muslim. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. I survived fire that should have killed me because God had a bigger plan. And now you're part of that plan. This is your moment. Don't waste it.